Francisco Pizarro. Born at some point in the 1470s in modern-day Spain, Francisco Pizarro was the illegitimate son of an infantry colonel and seemed to be destined for an uneventful life of poverty, a man whose name would be forgotten upon his death. But fate had other things in store for Francisco. He was born in a time when the Americas had only recently been discovered by Europeans, and countless men in the same lowly position as Pizarro dreamed of leaving the confines of Spain and obtaining fame and, more importantly, fortune on the shores of the New World. On the 10th of November 1509, Pizarro departed Spain as a member of an expedition which was planning to set up a colony in Colombia. Yet despite the expedition failing, Pizarro had earned a reputation as a man who could be relied upon, and he eventually rose to become the mayor of Panama City. However, such titles were not enough for Pizarro. While serving in Panama, tales of a land to the south that was rich in gold reached the ambitious Pizarro's ear. Hungry for wealth and fame, he arranged an expedition to head south into modern-day Peru and conquer this land of gold. However, the campaign failed due to bad weather, a lack of food, and fierce resistance from hostile native tribes he encountered along the way. The beaten Pizarro returned to Panama. However, undeterred, he began planning a second expedition. Just 2 years later, he again headed south, this time reaching northern Peru, finding evidence of a great empire that was rich in the gold and silver he so lusted after. Pizarro saw an opportunity to recruit allies who were hostile to the Incas and use them along with his superior weaponry to conquer the Incan Empire in the name of the Spanish king, making himself extraordinarily rich in the process. With this newfound knowledge, he returned to Panama to plan his third and final expedition, which would result in the total conquest of the Inca. Joined by his brothers, he departed south from Panama in 1530 on the expedition which would write his name in the history books, as well as seal the fate of an empire and its millions of inhabitants. Over the next 2 years, Pizarro pushed into Incan lands, recruiting allies where possible, but destroying anyone who stood in his way. It was during this time that Pizarro learned that the Incan emperor was embroiled in a civil war with his brother, and was therefore in a weakened position. This news emboldened Pizarro, who marched deeper into Incan territory. However, the emperor was aware of the Spanish incursion into his empire, and after learning that the Spanish force consisted of just 168 men, compared to the 80,000 men he had under his command, an invitation was sent to Pizarro to visit the city of Cajamarca to meet with him, with the intention of capturing the Spaniards and putting an end to this foreign threat once and for all. Believing that he was operating from a position of strength, the emperor made the mistake of camping the majority of his army outside the city and proceeded to meet Pizarro in the city's plaza, accompanied by just 6,000 bodyguards who were armed only with small axes and slings. The meeting was a trap, and Pizarro had his men hidden around the plaza, ready to ambush the royal litter. Surrounded by a massive Incan army and trapped deep within enemy territory, Pizarro knew that his only chance at survival was to capture the emperor alive. According to some sources, the emperor was met in the plaza by a Spanish priest, who handed him a Bible and demanded he convert to Catholicism and swear fealty to the King of Spain. The emperor refused and threw the Bible onto the floor, causing the Spanish to launch the attack. The Spanish cavalry charged the unsuspecting Incans, while infantrymen launched devastating volleys of musket fire into their densely packed ranks. The men carrying the emperor's litter ignored their wounds, as the Spanish hacked at them with their swords, the dying men using the stumps where their arms or hands had once been, in a desperate attempt to hold the litter up, until eventually they could do so no longer. Other attendants rushed in, using their own bodies to shield the emperor. However, their efforts were also in vain, and Pizarro himself seized the emperor while the remaining Incan forces were cut down. Thousands of Incan soldiers, commanders, and unarmed attendants lay dead in the central plaza. The shock of the attack and the capture of their emperor caused the army encamped outside the city walls to flee, their morale completely shattered by the unexpected events that had transpired in the plaza. The emperor was taken to a building known as the Ransom Room, where he promised to fill the room with gold in exchange for his freedom. Yet despite fulfilling his side of the bargain and making Pizarro an incredibly wealthy man, Pizarro reneged on the deal. After the ransom was received, the emperor was given a hasty trial, where he was accused of a multitude of crimes before being found guilty and put to death by strangulation. With the emperor dead and the Incan army routed, the path to the royal capital lay open and undefended. The eventual capture of the capital sealed Pizarro's conquest of the Incan Empire. He had gambled and won. His ambush of the emperor, accomplishing what most would have thought to be impossible, destroying an empire which had stood for centuries with his tiny force of men. Yet, as though taking the emperor's empire, gold, and life was not enough, it's believed that Pizarro even took his wife as a concubine, as though in a final insult, the widow later giving Pizarro 2 sons. Pizarro went on to found the city of Lima, and would spend the remainder of his life destroying what remained of Incan resistance, converting the population to Christianity at the point of the sword, and putting down rebellions. His ruthless treatment of his enemies showed no signs of dwindling with age, and those chieftains who continued to resist were routinely slaughtered, often by being burned alive. The once mighty Incan Empire now lay in ruins, with as much as 90% of its population wiped out by war and disease, and those who survived, now under complete Spanish dominance, reduced to second-class citizens in their own land. Yet despite the incredible wealth and power Pizarro had amassed in his life, he too would meet an equally violent and bloody end, and was assassinated by being stabbed in the throat in 1541 by the son of a rival conquistador whom he had previously had arrested and killed.